From completely remaking the game from scratch on the year it was supposed to release, to obliterating the charts at number 1 after coming out, making about 1 billion in its first year in Japan alone. The success story of Umamusume Pretty Derby is inspiring on the outside and was made possible by decisions that could only be described as batshit crazy on the inside. It all began at the game company CyGames. CyGames was a subsidiary of a major Japanese internet company, CyberAgent, established in 2011 specifically to create top-tier mobile games, and within only a few years of its establishment, had already proved itself to be a powerhouse. In its year of establishment, 2011, it released Idol Master Cinderella Girls, taking the 2.5D idol industry in Japan by storm. It quite literally is the final boss of the idol industry. This thing is huge in Japan. In the following years, it would release more big-name mobile games such as Grand Blue Fantasy and Shadowverse. I think you can see that CyGames at this point was already a juggernaut in the Japanese gacha game industry. One day, to expand their ever-growing gacha game empire, a batshit insane, horse shit insane? Proposal was made. The idea to have real racehorses reimagined as anime horse girls who then train at a special academy and compete in races like actual racehorses, who then are also idols that perform after a victory on stage. Yes, horse idols. Imagine being at the meeting listening to this proposal. Actual acid trip of an idea, but it got through. It was approved, and CyGames got the producer of Idol Master Cinderella Girls, Akihiro Ishihara, to be the content producer for this new concept, capitalizing on his experience with idol games. From the very beginning, Ishihara dreamt big. Just like Idol Master, he didn't want this to just be a mobile game. He wanted this to be a multimedia franchise. And so, even in the game's development stage, plans for a manga, anime, and idol songs were all launched, the company showing huge ambition with this absolute LSD trip of an idea. On March 26, 2016, the crazy idea was first revealed to the public at Anime Japan, a huge yearly anime festival. And within the year, the scale of this insane project was shown in its full glory to the weebs. An anime announced, a manga series released, character CD songs coming out monthly, and most importantly, 18 main characters, each representing a very famous in-real-life horse, were shown. Although at the time, none of their names were actually revealed yet. This is mostly speculated to be due to licensing issues. What licensing, you may ask? Well, horse permission. See, a huge theme of the vision was to make the game be very closely tied to IRL horse racing. That's why all the horse girls are named after famous racehorses. But what that meant was they'd have to go to each and every one of the horses' owners and ask for permission to use their names, most likely needing to agree on some sort of licensing deal. Ultimately though, their names were eventually revealed, and CyGames formally stated that they got formal permission from each and every one of the horses' owners. This may seem like a huge hassle at first that other gacha games just don't have to ever deal with, but in a few years' time, it would prove to pay off more than anyone could have ever imagined. As time went on, CyGames was building up hype for the game in every possible medium you could imagine. Manga, music, radios, literally a live concert with all the voice actresses. Yes, far before the game or anime came out. They even had a campaign where horse girls were revealed via a fun name-guessing web campaign where fans had to identify new characters from visual hints related to the real horses, hyping up not just anime fans, but horse racing fans. Before any real mainline content had even come out, there was already a super invested fan base. Anticipation was building up very quickly, and soon, in mid-2017, CyGames officially announced that the game would be released in 2018, with them opening pre-registration in March. Meanwhile, Season 1 of Umamusume Pretty Derby released in the spring season, giving fans the first taste of what the world was like, and it was glorious. While it wasn't a mega hit like the mainstream shonen or anything, fans were very happy with what they got. This weird-ass idea of combining anime girls, horse racing, and idols somehow turned out amazing. The funny thing is, Umamusume at first seemed to lean in a lot more towards the idol side of things, but with the release of the anime, CyGames noticed something. The anime mainly focused on the racing competitions and character stories in a sports anime-like way, and fans really dig this aspect. So came a realization. Perhaps this was a better direction to take the game in. What they also started to realize at the same time though is the game was turning out to be a disaster in what we call development hell. As 2018 progressed, it became clear that Umamusume the game was not ready for launch at all. In December 2018, CyGames announced an indefinite delay of the game's release, shocking fans as it became clear that it was facing major development issues. Internally though, what was actually going on was a change in development structure. There was apparently a big change in direction during development in 2018. Unhappy with what they had and the current direction of the game, instead of building upon what the old team had made, they decided to essentially remake the entire game from scratch. The team simply thought that they could make a better final product this way. Now, most companies would be outraged at this. Years of development costs down the drain. But CyGames? Management actually fully approved of this crazy-ass decision, claiming that they were willing to spend more time to achieve a game of the highest quality possible. One of the game leads said that this was just CyGames' company culture. We'd rather take time and stick to our quality standards than release something we aren't satisfied with. When they said they were redoing everything, they meant everything. For example, the game used to be developed as a landscape mobile game, but they decided to change it to a portrait vertical orientation in the rehaul. The reason? Vertical play also allowed the full body of the characters to be shown, including their tails, an iconic feature of the horse girls. And well, the fact that the girls were horses based on real horses was a key appeal, so being able to fully show this off was important. They wanted the horse racing fans to be invested. However, this also meant that the developers had to completely redo the UI and the visuals of the game. Apparently, the core gameplay loop was also completely refined in the process. In their own words, mainly to find a way to satisfy both hardcore horse racing fans and casual otaku who just wanted to see cute anime girls. So yes, they really just remade the game, and it took a long time. Amidst this, the original content producer, Ishihara, who had also been a key figure in promoting the game, actually resigned from CyGames and stepped down. It's unknown exactly why, but some speculate that it was because of creative differences, as the game was starting to lean much more towards the horse racing than the idol aspect. Even so, the existing team simply continued to work without him. For the fans though, throughout 2019 to 2020, the franchise stayed alive through mediums like the continuously updating manga, more character songs, and even a Yonkoma chibi anime, alongside season 2 of the main anime announced to be released in 2021. But even with all this content, fans were starting to get impatient. It had been 2 whole years since the initial pre-registration, and the resignation of the main content producer wasn't exactly a very good look. But finally, in December 2020, CyGames announced that Umamusume's game would launch on February 24, 2021. Almost 5 years since its initial announcement, an almost unheard of delay in the gacha game industry, except for the Genshin anime. Seriously, where is it? At the same time, the second season of the Umamusume anime was also airing right at the time of the game's release, winter 2021. Even more so than the first season, the second season received incredible praise from fans for its amazing character stories and super emotional moments. It's legit one of the most well-received sports anime, like ever. And so, the stage was set. The hype somehow stayed alive and it was time for the release of the game. The result? Instant success. From the very hour the game released, it blew up. The delay somehow seemed to only have bolstered the hype around it. Within hours, the game shot to the #1 spot on both the App Store and Google Play, top grossing charts in Japan. By the end of the week, it already had millions of downloads, and in 5 months, the game hit an astounding 10 million downloads. By its first year, the game grossed roughly 965 million USD, and the parent company CyberAgent reported that largely thanks to Umamusume, their gaming revenue was up about 152% year on year, and operating profit up 484%, an almost unheard of leap. Keep in mind, this game only released in Japan. All those downloads and profits, a few foreigners who could read Japanese aside, were pretty much all from Japan alone. The country has about 120 million people. That's almost 10% of the population that downloaded the game in the first 5 months. That is genuinely insane. And it's not just the numbers. Just according to CyGames Keikaku, this game started a cultural revolution. This was because it wasn't just the otaku playing the game. Everyone was playing the game. Your sister, your mom, your boss, hell, your grandma would be playing it. Seriously, it was a social phenomenon, and everywhere you looked on trains in Japan, people were taming their horse waifus. The reason? Horse racing has a very long history in Japan and has quite the cultural relevance. So by having the game's characters be so faithful to all the real-life horses they were based on, the game managed to reach the hardcore horse racing fans, and through that, the general public. The main reason for the game's success was the exact reason the developers remade the entire game: the focus on the sports-like element. They really did their homework, like down to the history and small little characteristics of all the real horses. Everything was reflected in their counterpart, which really impressed horse racing fans. But beyond that, the game let you celebrate your wins with the horse girls performing, letting horse racing fans create stories and timelines different from what they might have experienced in real life horse racing. For example, there's a very famous IRL racehorse called Haru Urara, famous for racing over 100 times and never winning a single race. Horse racing fans somehow found this charming and started really rooting for Haru Urara, but she just kept running and losing. It got to the point where people were sometimes just throwing money to support her, knowing they'd lose their money, and keeping the bet as a lucky charm from this beloved horse. All the way up to its retirement, the horse never won a single race and retired happily. What am I trying to say? In the game, you can let Haru Urara win! And there's just something sentimental about letting a horse who could never get a W in her entire racing career actually win and stand on the victory stage, doing her victory dance. It really is thanks to the game's girls being so reminiscent to the in-real-life horses that people can form such a deep emotional attachment to the girls through the IRL horses. That is the core of why this game succeeded so much. Of course, the incredible anime did wonders promoting it to anime fans too. The otaku love the idol performances, and the game just seemed to be able to attract every audience imaginable. In fact, as the game grew, it single-handedly made many young Japanese people interested in the horse racing scene that used to be perceived as old-fashioned. Honestly, to Japan, it was genuinely a cultural revolution. Actually, Umamusume already had a tie-up with the Tokyo Racecourse JRA, the major institute backing Japan's horse racing, in 2018, before the game even launched. But fast forward to now, just go watch a Japanese horse race and you will see your share of weebs cheering for their favorite horse. Girl. As time went on, the game continued to succeed. It won an award for excellence at the Japan Game Awards 2021. The songs made CD music charts like Oricon, and everything seemed to be going so well. But like all gacha games, some controversy to come was inevitable. The most infamous one in the hardcore fanbase was probably the 1250 incident. So in the game, you have a bunch of stats for every girl. In an update announced on August 21st, 2022, they announced that the cap of these stats would be raised from 1,200 to anywhere between 1,300 to 1,600 depending on stat. However, as the update was rolled out 3 days later, players noticed that despite burning their resources to raise their girls' stats to the new cap, there was barely any performance enhancement. A speed of 1600 felt as if it was actually only about 1250. At first, people thought it was simply a glitch, but after going through the maintenance notes, it essentially acknowledged that enhancements beyond 1200 would be smaller. What enraged people was CyGames not clearly stating this in the pre-update announcement. Some whales, especially those who had spent a bunch of money on cards specifically for this update, were pissed off, some wanting to quit the game and requesting refunds. Upgrading from 1200 to 1600 costed way more than the early stats, as much in-game resources as it would normally take to get to a stat of 2000, but your actual stat increase reflected in races would be that of about from 1200 to 1250. Therefore, the phrase 1600 equals 2000 equals 1250 started trending. CyGames quickly noticed their enraged fanbase and tweeted just a day later that they've noticed the people and this would be fixed in a future balance patch, which they quickly rolled out a week later on 2nd September. This update made the upgraded value about half instead of 1/8, so 1400 I guess. However, it was too late. The damage had been done. Much of their fanbase, especially the hardcore players, felt betrayed, as if they had been scammed. The management team of CyGames that was once seen as a godlike management now had a reputation of being untrustworthy. By no means did Umamusume collapse, but its finances did seem to suffer a bit. While we don't know the exact amount, CyGames reports a come down from the initial boom right after the 1250 incident. Trying to win players' trust back, in February 2023, for the 2nd anniversary, they launched major updates including a new training scenario and generous login rewards, plus many quality of life changes to win back lapsed players. Profits stayed good, but did cool down a bit, and last year, in 2024, revenue in Japan was estimated at 367 million, down about 62% from 2021, although some sources point to it being even lower. This isn't necessarily because of the 1250 incident though, as it could just be the natural losing of interest in a hot game, like with many previous gacha games. The franchise overall though, that was still doing wonders. As the game blew up and the franchise grew bigger and bigger, collabs with real horse racing became far more frequent, with multiple a year in Japan, and eventually even reached America's horse racing scene, being involved in multiple cups, such as the CyGames Breeders' Cup Sprint last year. More impressively though, it was the main sponsor for the Grand Prix de Paris in France this year. Like, this is their poster for the in real life horse racing in France. It's insane! French waves, where you at? In late June, the global version of Umamusume released, and it has been doing wonders, with huge streamers many thought had nothing to do with anime going crazy over the game.
Race! She's in second! Down the sideline!
It rocketed to #1 on sales charts in many countries, and saw a peak concurrent player count of 87,000 plus on Steam. An insanely high number if you ask any gamer. Today, lifetime revenue has surpassed 2.4 billion USD across all versions, and only continues to grow as the franchise gets more and more tied up to in real life horse racing, and horse girls continue to take over the world. Special thanks to Vicente Pagani and all my other patrons and members for supporting the channel.